Good evening. Welcome to another edition of the Gersnet Podcast, the independent Rangers podcast by fans for fans, where all your content is absolutely free, coming to you in association with Forest Precision Engineering. I'm your host tonight, Brian Archer, and as always, we would encourage you to get onto the Gersnet website and check out our forums for all your latest Rangers news and discussions. We're live tonight on the YouTube channel, and we'd ask that you continue to share the podcast on social media, spread the word, and please subscribe to the YouTube channel. Before I introduce my guest for tonight, I need to give another mention to our partners over at Forest Precision Engineering. They're a Glasgow-based engineering company who have been a big commercial supporter of Rangers for a number of years, and we're delighted to have them supporting the podcast. If you want more information about them, please visit their website at www.forestprecisioneng.com. They've also got a stunning executive lounge in the Ibrox main stand, and if you want more information on that, email the club at hospitality@rangers.co.uk. Right, now to bring in my guest, joining me tonight is Alan Rogers. Alan, how you doing?
Yeah, very well, thanks. Very well. How are you?
Yeah, good, good. Glad it's Friday. Just hoping we can get through tonight without any red cards or booing in the comments. I think we've had enough of that today.
I've asked my son to prepare a speech, but he's only three, so I won't put him on the spot like that just in case he gets booed off.
Aye, best to avoid that. Best to avoid that. We've seen enough of that
I think it's
today.
I think it's just fun to see a Scottish football club that's a bigger calamity than Rangers right at the moment in terms of its boardroom and its execs. It's good that that heat's taken off us for once.
Yeah, I didn't think we would see anything top our whole AGM in the white tent in the middle of the pitch, but it seems like it's been managed today, to be honest, from what I can see online,
Yeah,
which is quite
it's
some feat.
It's pretty good. I think that will go down as one of those great Scottish football moments, like
Mm.
the 10 AGM, like Rod Stewart doing the cup draw and all this kind of stuff, and Connor Salmon getting a pizza for being man of the match. All these kind of good Scottish football moments. I think that'll top it. So yeah, fair play to those attendees today because that was pretty damn funny.
Yeah, and speaking of good Scottish moments, that leads me into my first point. Before we talk about Rangers, I think we should probably have a quick discussion about the international break. I'll be honest, normally I'm not a fan of international breaks and it tends to just disrupt my enjoyment of the season. But I've got to admit, watching Scotland qualify for their first World Cup since 1998 was pretty special. How about you? What did that mean to you?
Well, I mean, I was happy to see us qualify. I think it's better to have a World Cup to look forward to, and you've got a team there to support. You always want the Scottish national team to do well. I've always been of that view. Obviously, things are fractious between the Rangers support and the Tartan Army, certainly since 2012. I think after that, obviously, the whole Scottish football sort of ganged up and kicked Rangers when they were down and sort of, won't forgive and forget and all that. Then you had that plethora, that spell where every Rangers player was getting booed on the park for Scotland, and it just kind of left a real bitter taste in the mouth. I think that's probably died down a bit in recent, maybe the last 3, 4, 5 seasons or so. Um, but look, it's better for Scottish football that the national team is doing well, and so we all have to just kind of enjoy it while it lasts. The passion is never going to be matched for the passion you have for your club, but as I say, I think we can all enjoy this or enjoy the moment and being able to look forward to next summer and to see who Scotland will get in the draw. And you've got to say it was a good match, a really good match. I think I saw most of it. The quality of goals Scotland scored were ridiculously good. I think that I saw a stat saying that McTominay overhead kick was the highest. He's met it at the highest point there's ever been since records began. It's sort of 8 meters or whatever it was. I mean, it was 8 feet, no 8 meters. That'd be crazy. But it was that was unbelievable. Obviously, the third was a really nice strike, and then obviously a halfway line or inside his own half just from McLean. I mean, that's unreal. I mean, that's the way he hits that is so straight and so perfect, and just kind of tucks right inside the post. One of those ones that as soon as you hit it, you thought that's in. So yeah, really good technique. And look, it's good. It's good. You'd rather Scotland were there than not there. Put it that way.
Yeah, it definitely gives us something to look forward to in the summer for sure. Um, Away from Scotland, a couple of other Rangers players who seem to do quite well in their over the international break. Miovski and Oliver Antman both on the score sheet for the national teams. Two players that for me haven't really shown what they can do in a Rangers jersey. But is it now time for some of these players to bring their international form into Rangers?
Well, we've got to hope so. Miovski for me, he's looked like a real fish out of water since he signed for Rangers. A fee of allegedly around 4.5 million. I mean, Chermiti's getting a lot of heat for being 8 million and not producing, but 4.5 still a huge fee in Scottish football terms. And we know Miovski can do it at this level, and he just hasn't really turned up so far, which is really strange. But his goal was nice. He was kind of running through, nice finish. But I mean, they get spanked 7-1. It's not. It's not that much of an impact.
Yeah.
So we know he's capable, and we need him. Apart from anything else, we need him to perform as if there's to be salvaging anything from this season. Similar to Antman, again, he was about 3.5, 4 million, something like that. A good record in Holland. He's just come nowhere near to replicating that since he came to Scotland. And we do have to accept, players do take time to adapt, to get used to the new style and new surroundings and all that. But apart from his debut, we've seen really, really not much from Antman. Really not much at all. I remember one really good run he had against Hibs at Ibrox in the Cup game late on. He almost scored. But other than that, he's just looked pretty anonymous. And it's really weird. Obviously, he scored for Finland, but they play in Andorra or something like that. Again, you do have to take the level of opposition into account. But yeah, it can do nothing but help their confidence. So we've got to hope that they can come back to Scotland with a bit of a spring in their step.
Yeah. Another notable player who turned out for his national team was Nico Raskin. He always seems to do really well with Belgium, but I've got to be honest, this season hasn't really, for me, hasn't hit the heights that he did at the back end of last season when he was kind of scoring goals and making real contributions. With him now likely going to the World Cup with Belgium, you've got to imagine he's kind of cemented his place in that starting team now. How important is it that we get that contract situation resolved one way or another?
Yeah, we have to have a resolution one way or another. I highly suspect that resolution will be he gets sold in January. I saw an Instagram post someone had sent me during the week from an agency saying, we welcome Nico Raskin, Rangers midfielder. So if he's switching agents, that's usually what a player does when he's angling for a move. I highly suspect Raskin will be sold in January, and if he's not signing a new contract, rightly so, because we cannot possibly afford to let him run it down. Even getting within 12 months will be difficult. You take that gamble, you keep him to the end of the season, you keep your fingers crossed he has a great World Cup, Belgium have a great World Cup, and you can maybe get more for him. But I just don't think that's a gamble Rangers can afford to take with the luck we've had in that regard over recent seasons. All it takes is one injury, and then you've got his contract's expiring in less than 12 months and he's not fit. I mean, that would be disastrous, because you like to think that even Rangers will be able to get a good fee for Raskin in January if he's now a starter for Belgium, which I think he started the last 5 of the last 6 games or something like that, and they're on decent run. I think they have qualified now as well, so he's cemented that place, and we should be able to command a good fee for him, almost regardless of his club form. Because you're right, his club form hasn't been good this season. Again, Europe's been a complete disaster for the whole squad, but Raskin included, he's not showing up in the Europa League either, which is a level he really should be performing and standing out at. So January will be a big month in terms of Raskin, but I do expect that he'll get sold. And of course, if he's not signing up, then we have to sell him. We just have to get the best fee we possibly can for him.
Yeah, I tend to think the time to sell him was in the summer. I'm not sure he'll want to move now in January, given that if he moves clubs and then it doesn't go well for him at a new club, that potentially puts his national team spot at risk. Whereas at least if he stays at Rangers, he knows he's playing every week and he's almost guaranteed to be on that plane to the World Cup.
Yeah,
So
I
I
mean, I
do look
suppose
at
like
it as
like
a
I
bigger
suppose like
risk.
most of these things, it maybe just depends what his options are. I saw he was linked with Spurs. Now I'm not sure Spurs are likely to buy him at all. But if he's got options at a decent English level, or maybe a good French team or something like that, I can see him going. But if he's got limited bids for him, or it's like a Saudi club or something like that, I mean, he's never going to take that move. So it's going to be an interesting month in terms of what we do with him. But I do think we need to play quite hardball with him, because we saw at his previous club he ran his contract down so he could sign for Rangers. Obviously, we weren't complaining about that at the time. So he knows how to work the system, and we need to be a wee bit tough with him to say, well, look, shit or get off the pot, so to speak, and just make a firm decision one way or t'other, because the club has to come first.
Yeah, we can't afford to let another one of our assets walk out the door for nothing, that's for sure. Some news that came out over the international break, Scott Fry appointed set piece coach. Um, on the face of its status in terms of what he's done with his previous club in terms of set pieces, look really good. So it looks like a really strong appointment. How important could this prove to be in terms of those marginal gains? Set pieces are now becoming such a big part of the modern game. You look at Arsenal down south, how would they take advantage of not just free kicks and corners, but even things like throw-ins as well now. They're kind of taking advantage of. Is this just Rangers trying to almost become like a modern football club now?
Rangers trying to become a modern club. Jeez, pigs will fly. But no, I mean, I think that's exactly what it is, and it's long overdue. Set pieces are a crucial part of the game, especially in Scotland. Lots of big players in this league, and you've got some teams come to Ibrox and play for set pieces. They want free kicks in and around the box to try and launch it in. So defensively, you've got to be on the ball with that. And offensively, Rangers just don't score anywhere near enough. I think I'm right in saying that Rangers scored the fewest number of set-piece goals in the league last season. I think that's right. I'm sure I read that, which is wild when you think about it, given the amount of attacking the Rangers do generally, and the amount of time we spend in the opposition final third. And obviously, we all know our defensive fragilities from set-pieces as well. I've got to exercise it from my mind, but that Sturm Graz away game, where we lost the goal from the free kick, where the defensive line everyone was in a line about 40 yards up, and they just rolled the free kick behind us, and the guy ran in and scored. That's one of the worst goals I've ever seen a professional team lose. I mean, it was diabolical. And if Scott Fry can come in and just cut out the absolute schoolboy nonsense like that, it'll be a step in the right direction, because they've just been not good enough for a long time. And his record, as you say, is good. It's Lincoln City he came from, which again, you've got to say, okay, what's that level like? But at the same time, we're still bringing him into the Scottish league. I think it's better than Lincoln City's level generally, but it's still not EPL or La Liga level. You like to think he can bring some of that experience in, and it'll be impactful in the division that we play in. But as always, the proof of the pudding's in the eating. Everyone's going to be on temp. The first free kick or corner we get on Saturday, you can see people going to be nudging each other, going, "Oh, I wonder what we're going to do. This is going to be dynamite." And it's going to be a groan if it's not. The usual kind of first man clearance. But he's got to have time to work with the players. But fans love to see things coming off on the pitch that they've clearly worked on the training ground. They love to see that thought going into it. Cornelius scored a goal the other week that looked like it came off the training ground, and everybody loves that. So if that can translate to the on-field action, then all the better. He'll have earned his salary.
Does his previous links to Thelwell concern you? There was a lot of talk when he was appointed, people looking into his previous clubs. He had a spell at Wolves, I think, where Thelwell also was, and it seems like every appointment that we make at the minute's got some kind of connection to Kevin Thelwell. Does that concern you at all?
It concerns me. Obviously, when he was first linked, and you look and he was at Wolves with Thelwell, you think, and it's just the optics of it. Obviously, Kevin Thelwell was under a lot of pressure just now from the fans. Fairly, I think, given the transfer business that he's overseen. But you just think somebody might just put an arm around him and just say, "Kevin, mate, see bringing in your son? Not right now. It just doesn't look good." You just want that kind of executive control at the top. And the club seems to lack that, or either just not care. So to bring in, obviously we've got the new head of youth coming in from Wolves he's worked with before. We've obviously got the set piece coach now coming he's worked with before. And you just got to say, again, the optics of that are not good. Just bringing in people Now, of course, the flip side to that is, well, I'm bringing in someone I know because I know he's good, in which case, fine. But then you get back to the same again, the proof of the pudding's in the eating. If we come in and if Scott Fry comes in and suddenly our set pieces defensively and offensively are great, nobody's going to bother about any kind of Thelwell connection. Nobody at all. If the new chap comes in whose name escapes me in January, and we start seeing more academy boys coming in, start progressing, and the results improve, nobody will bat an eyelid that he's one of Thelwell's mates. None at all. But the flip side's also true. If they don't succeed, if there's no clear impact and positive impact that these guys have, they will be under greater pressure because they were brought in by Kevin Thelwell, having worked for them before. Same as his son. You know, his son might come in, he's only 26, he might come in and do a great job. But if he doesn't, the pressure on him will be immeasurably more than it would be if it was Joe Blogg's nobody that had come in and done exactly the same job. You know, he's putting them in the firing line. Now, optimistically, you'd have to say he's putting them in the firing line because he's got complete faith that they can come in and be successful. And we've got to hope that that's the case. But if they're not, there's obviously going to be a sharpening of the knives that are already out for Kevin Thelwell. So it's high stakes for him, I suspect, and we've got to hope that it works out.
Yeah, it's an interesting one. Um, Going into the international break, in terms of coaching staff appointments, a lot of the talk was more around this kind of local coach that's been talked about, and Danny Rose made mention that he wanted somebody that's got a connection to the club. Is that still required, do you think, or do you think he's kind of now got his coaching team kind of in place?
I suspect he's got it in place. I think with, Danny Rose been in for a while now, we've had those murmurings about a local coach or Rangers man. Nothing's really progressed. Although there's been some sort of tenuous links to a few people, there's nothing concrete's come out of it. Nobody's come in and said they've interviewed for it or anything like that. So I wonder if he's come in and reassessed about exactly what's needed. And it's pressure. He's stopped talking about Stevie Smith in glowing terms. So you wonder if they've just thought, we don't need an extra coach, to do what exactly? We've got to understand, when Barry Ferguson, Neil McCann, Billy Dodds, Alan McGregor, they all came in, there was good results in there, but overall the domestic form was not good. The performances were not good. Jack Butland was not good when he was being coached by Alan McGregor. We just have to say that. So that getting this kind of Scottish guy in just to sort of G them up or shake fists at them, I think that's a wee bit 1970s. It's always nice to see a legend in the dugout. People talk about Steve Davis and things like that. I mean, Steve Davis will always be welcome back at Ibrox, and we're very welcome in the dugout or on the training pitch. But would he have an impact? That's the key. And if Danny Rule comes in and says, "I don't think we need him," then you've got to go with what the manager says. You can't be in a position that you're foisting coaches or foisting staff on the manager. He's got to be comfortable with the individuals he's working with, and to be honest, it looks like he is currently. So again, it's one of these ones we just have to trust in that and hope it works out.
Yeah, it certainly seems like that's went on the back burner anyway, and I guess we'll see if anything
There was some
more
absolutely
comes of it.
horrible chat about Ricky Foster coming in.
Oh,
It could
no,
just have been Twitter because I think he'd resigned from
no.
his current role, and it was this kind
No.
we're bringing in Ricky Foster. So you've got to get that balance just right. That bringing in someone like Steve Davis or Jermaine Defoe, the fans would love to see them there. If you're bringing in your your Ricky Fosters or your Philippe Senderosses, fans will be less keen. So it could just be that they just haven't got the right candidate.
I've still never forgiven Ricky Foster for that miss against, I think it was Valencia when he missed an absolute sitter in the Champions League during his first spell
Aye.
with us. I've still never forgiven him for that, to be honest.
Yeah, well, I've still never forgiven him for being in the team that lost that Petrofac Cup final at Easter Road to Wraith Rovers. I've never forgiven that whole team, if I'm honest, because that was an absolutely miserable day. But yeah, let's not talk about this kind of stuff. We're trying to be positive and optimistic on a Friday night.
Yeah, the less said about that, the better. No, I was feeling quite positive and optimistic this morning. I had that, Friday feeling, game on Saturday. Often we get a 3 o'clock kickoff on a Saturday. I was quite looking forward to it. And along came the press conference, and nothing says welcome back like a massive list of injury concerns for Rangers. So I think the manager mentioned today that we had definite outs were Mikey Moore, John Suter, Cornelius. I think Chermiti is an injury doubt as well. You could argue whether that's a great loss, to be honest, the form he's been in. But with all these players out, what what does the manager do? He's almost got half a team out there. I mean, Mikey Mills came on to a really good game. I know he's still a young boy and still kind of making his way in the game, but you have to say he has been playing really well. And we've effectively got a two starting centre halves out as well.
Yeah, I mean it's a concern, but we're used to dealing with this. It happens every season. We'll just have to cope. We do have a big squad. You look at defensively, we've got what Gigas will play, no doubt. We've still got Fernandez, who's rarely seen, but now surely he's going to get a chance. Inciala's still kicking about. Tav can play at centre half. I see Sterling's been back in training. So there are options there, and it's really up to players to come in and just grab their chance. We've got to remember when I'm not comparing them really, so nobody jump on me, but even at the start of Van Bronckhorst's reign, Bassey wasn't really rated. He came in because of injuries in that game away to Prague. It was Bassey and Balogun at centre half, and they were both dreadful. And we lost, and he got kind of written off at that stage. And it was only really when he came back into the team, sort of January, and with Dortmund, the Dortmund ties especially, suddenly Bassey burst onto the scene. And then 3 months later he's getting sold for a record fee. So it's rare that happens, but you've also got to give the players a chance to make that happen. I'm not saying Fernandez is the next Calvin Bassey by a long stretch, don't get me wrong, but he can't prove his worth when he's not even in squads. He's got one start and one goal. Okay, it was against Alloa, but you can only score against the opposition that's on the pitch. So I'd like to see us just put a bit of faith in him. It's Livingston at home. It's a game we expect to win. It's a game we expect to be doing a lot of attacking. And you do expect Livingston will play a bit of a high ball game, so it might suit someone like Fernandez. You've got to give him a chance. We've spent money on him, so let's get him in and see what he can do. And not be afraid to pitch players in and let them develop. Because ultimately that's what we're supposed to be. We're supposed to be a club that has this player trading model, and the only way you're going to trade players up is if they actually get minutes on the pitch.
Yeah, and when all said and done with Fernandez, we spent what, 3.5 million quid on him. We at some point we need to see whether that was money well spent or not. We can't just have him sitting on the sidelines all season.
What I will say is, although Suter and Cornelius are our two first choice centre halves, I don't think either of them are particularly impressed this season. Suter I think has had a bad season, and Cornelius for me he's had good moments, but at 27 and internationally just looks a wee bit average to me. With no real sort of standout attributes, and he's been poor in Europe, you've got to say. So it's that kind of, are they a massive loss? Well, yes, they probably are, but can they be improved upon? Also, yes, absolutely, they can be improved upon. And it's up to the likes of Fernandez or Sterling maybe to come in and take the jersey.
Yeah, and if you were to ask me right now in terms of both of those, Suter and Cornelius, I probably wouldn't be offering Suter a new deal as things currently stand, and Cornelius is still only on loan. I think there is an option there, but I probably wouldn't be taking that option up at the minute, to be honest. So
Yeah,
you're
I
probably
mean,
right in terms
certainly
of
the whisper when he arrived was the option was €5 million, and I wouldn't be paying that for Cornelius
no,
at all.
no.
And as you say, Suter, I think if Suter was going to be offered a new deal, he'd have been offered it by now. Again, we've seen this in recent seasons. Players in the last year of their contract tend not to play well. You do wonder if Suter knows he's away, and that's why his mind or his focus is wandering a bit. But yeah, I just don't think he justifies a new deal, unfortunately. So again, guys like Fernandez that we've got signed up, let's give him a chance to see what he can do.
Yeah. Now, the three of those players that I mentioned, Muller, Suter, and Cornelius, the manager was essentially suggesting that they're all kind of out for essentially end of November, I guess, into next year potentially. Now, I don't know where you're at in terms of this season and league wise, and whether you still think there's an opportunity there to salvage something in terms of a title race of some description. But I hadn't really written anything off just because, other teams round about us aren't exactly on great form either. We know that across the city they've, not got their problems to seek, and Hearts have started to drop some points. They started to get some draws, and you wonder if, when it gets to the crunch time, is their lack of experience and being league leaders going to tell, and that kind of lets us back in. But how big a dent do these kind of injuries put in any potential for, us trying to get ourselves back into some sort of league challenge?
Well, yeah, we need to wait and see. Again, it's some of those injured players might not be the biggest loss. Again, Moore is going to be a loss, but equally he's 18. He's picked up form in the last month or so, but equally he's not been consistently great for us by any stretch. So it's up to other players to come in. Antman's not seen much action under Danny Rule, so you've got to suspect he might come in and get a bit more. We need more from the guys like Asgard, who's had a really slow start to his Rangers career. You've got to say. So it's up to these guys to come in and just grab the chance. because we can't write anything off. What are we, 9 points off Hearts? Is it? I think it is.
I think so. I think do we have a game in hand on Hearts as well, possibly?
Don't don't
Because
think we do. I can't remember is the honest answer. But if it's nine
yeah,
points off Hearts and it's November, that's not done and dusted by any stretch. Hearts will drop points. It's just a question of whether
yeah,
we drop more. We used to have that criticism aimed at Rangers squads in recent seasons that they don't have the experience of a title running. They don't have that intensity and that kind of rhythm to win. Well, if we're going to aim that at Rangers teams, you can also aim that at Hearts. They don't have that experience either. So the logic must also apply to them that they will wobble owing to that lack of experience. Again, our rivals across the city, they're in second place. They're not happy with their team, their boards. They've got a temp manager in place. I think their squad's much thinner than it was or that they wanted it to be. They're not scoring as many as they typically would. So, there's lots to play for. And things can really turn around in the space of 2-3 games. If certain results go certain ways, there can be a real turnaround at the top of the table. We can't give anything up. We've got another 2 league games. Was it Living at home and then Falkirk at home? Is it? I think
yeah,
that's just got to be 6 points, and let's see where we are after that, and then just take it one game at a time because December's a big month and a tricky month.
yeah. We're fast approaching the January transfer window. And I think Kevin Thelwell did an interview over the international break where he kind of suggested that we'll be active in the January window and we're looking to make, additions. And did does this kind of crop of injuries just emphasise how important it is that we bring in some quality in January, but equally, given that it's Thelwell that is sort of overseeing that January transfer window, do we trust that he's the man to go and identify that quality that we need given his track record?
Well, he's difficult to place your trust in him because we've got the summer transfer window so badly wrong. Again, there will be elements of Russell Martin's input into that. I've got absolutely no doubt. But we are where we are with it. He's not going anywhere, clearly, Kevin Thelwell. Clearly, he's going to be the man in charge of recruitment in January. And we need serious recruitment in January. Because just as we've discussed, the league's not gone. We've still got the Scottish Cup to play for. Okay, Europe's gone, accept that. But there's things to be salvaged from this season. And if we can have a good January window, then that will help us immeasurably to try and reach those aims. And we have to put our faith in Kevin Thelwell. We might not like it, but he's here. He's going to be tasked with it, and we just have to hope he gets it right. We really need, we don't need these loans from lower league EPL, these academy boys that he knows about coming in. We don't need that. We don't need League One team's best players and things like that because we need players that are going to come in and hit the ground running and be able to just adapt in the blink of an eye. Now, that is a tough ask. I completely accept that. But he's had 6 months, probably more than 6 months, given we knew he was coming in, a good few months before the end of last season. He's got to now got to grips with Scottish football. He's got his son there that he'll be working closely with from their list, no doubt. And he's got to know the unique type of player that we need in this league and the unique type of player that's successful up here. We've seen players that have won the World Cup come to Scottish football and not hack it. Some players just don't suit it. And we need to make sure that Thelwell's aware of that and he targets the right players. Because if we can target the right players, and I mean 3 or 4 decent quality players who are ready to start, not projects, not bench players, guys that are going to come in, and if they're fit, they play. If we can add 3 or 4 to the starting 11, then we do have a chance. We definitely need 2 centre backs. We definitely need a left back. We definitely need a striker. And if we can add quality in those areas, then we've still got a chance. But we need to identify the right targets. And that is easier said than done. But look, that's why he's highly paid, and that's why he's in that role to identify those targets and deliver on his promises.
Yeah, and let's hope that list they're working from extends further than the English top 2 divisions. To be honest,
Yeah, I mean, I think I've got to assume that if you've got to assume at these kind of scouting meetings that someone's discussing a target, they might say, I know, but he's playing for Brentford reserves. How are the fans going to react to this? So on one hand, you've got to kind of trust your process and say, well, I'm willing to bat for this player. I think he'll be a success. But on the other hand, you've also got to go, yeah, but like before, the optics are terrible. If we sign a player from that kind of, I don't know, from an Ipswich or something like that, I mean, the fans are just going to go ballistic, and it's not fair on that player because it puts him behind the eight
Yeah.
ball before he's kicked a ball. But then of course you look at we've signed Miovski, we've signed Antman, and neither of those have impressed either. And they don't fit that League One profile. So in some ways, he maybe can't win, but that's just the reality of working at a club like Rangers. The expectation's so high, you need to get it right. But I'd be really interested to see what we do in January, especially if we do sell Raskin, for example. If we can get a good fee for him, we'll have more money to spend, but also a huge gap in the team. The guy that's when he's fit, he starts is gone. One of the guys that has quality in the team, one of the few that has quality in the team, will now be gone, and that will be a huge gap to fill as well.
Yeah, with all this talk of kind of new players in January and players coming in from elsewhere, where are you at with how we progress our own young players? I know the manager had said today that Bailey Rice is out with an injury, and I'm also thinking of guys like the young guy Finlay Curtis, who's I think he's is he top goal scorer this season so far, or at least in the top three anyway, I think, and that's quite incredible given his lack of minutes. But we constantly talk about bringing in new players, and we brought in Mikey Moore, who's also only 18. But at some point, do we need to start giving a chance to our own players? We've got our new head of academy who's just come in as well. Surely at some point we need to try and get something out of this academy. Otherwise, it's just almost a wasted project, and you're as well not having it.
Yeah, I mean that's it, and it's been a problem for Rangers for my whole life. Basically, we don't produce enough youths. I think there's a few elements to it. Obviously, it's a difficult environment to come into as a young player because the pressure's so big. You don't get many games to adapt and settle down, and I can understand why there's a hesitance to put young players into that kind of environment. You remember the stick Charlie Adam got when he came in? Charlie Adam scored something like 15 goals from midfield in his first season, in a not good season. And he still got a lot of stick, even when Walter Smith trusted him to play games. Um, that's the kind of thing that these players are going into. They need to have a really thick skin to play for Rangers. So straight away, there's that kind of mental barrier to it. But then, of course, more fundamentally, there's just the ability question. Are these players good enough to play football at this level? They always say, if you can, academy football wise, if you can get one player a year out of the entire crop, you're doing really well. Just because so many of the young boys kind of fall by the wayside. Curtis has a lot of potential, but like talking about Fernandez, you need to give him minutes. He needs to develop. There was I was reading about Nathan Patterson this week online about his move to Everton. And obviously we get good money for him, and I'm sure he's on a huge contract and he's loaded now and all this stuff. But he's been injured so much, and he's not been injured. He's not played. He's missed out on absolutely crucial years in his development. And as such, he's looking at on a downward trajectory already now. It's making that move at the wrong time and not getting minutes after your move can be almost fatal to a player's career at that stage. Those kind of say 19 to 23 years, you need to be playing every week to develop properly. And he's missed out on that. And that was always my worry, bringing players in. If you don't give them enough minutes, they're not going to get better and they're not going to reach their potential. But at the same time, if you're bringing them in and they're not good enough, you can't give them minutes, or they're not coping with the pressure, you can't give them minutes. So it is a catch-22 situation, and everyone would love to see more and more young players getting chances in the team. But the academy, I think, has been a bit of a shit show really in the past couple of seasons. Lots of staff turnover and things like that, and there's issues with the B teams. Do we not withdraw from the B team league and now we play kind of challenge match and all this kind of stuff? There's no real consistent fixture schedule. And you just wonder how much use that is for anyone, to be playing so few matches at that kind of level. Even the Highland League stuff, when we were doing it, is that really worth your time? Is it? I remember Alex Lowry when he was here getting a really bad injury, playing at that kind of level, and it's just kind of, you just wonder if that's kind of worth it. But I think it's the same for most clubs in Scotland. The Scottish football just generally doesn't produce enough players. As it stands, the solution is obviously grassroots. But you and I grew up in the no ball games, signs up, and all the grassy parts of the streets.
Yeah.
So what do you do? It's a difficult one.
Yeah, as and we're now seeing more and more youngsters leaving your Motherwells and Aberdeens and going abroad to Italy, and I think that seems to be a path that we'll see more of instead of going to a Rangers or a Celtic. They're now deciding to kind of go abroad and, look at what it's done for Lewis Ferguson now,
Yeah.
to be fair. So I think that's another path that we'll see youngsters take, to be honest, rather than coming to a Rangers or a Celtic.
There has to be
Um,
there's that kind of weird fascination with Scottish players now from Italy because Ferguson did
yeah,
well. Even
yeah,
Conor Barron was linked with a move to Italy. I think again quite recently
yeah,
actually they were talking about. So is that there's you get that sometimes. I remember years ago when I forget his name, Celtic get that Honduran left back. Name escapes me, but when he arrived and did well, suddenly there was all these Hondurans in Scottish football, and
yeah,
Rangers took a bunch of Hondurans and trust. Obviously, an agent just like punting his clients, and teams just taking chances. And it was the same when Celtic signed all those Japanese players. Like they signed three good ones and a load of absolutely rotten ones that didn't last. But suddenly like Hearts and Dundee United and Dundee suddenly had Japanese players in their team because it's the agents coming in and sort of working in the
yeah,
market and everyone's trying to take a punt. So it feels like there's kind of Scottish agents working in Italy right now, just trying to sell clients. And it goes sometimes you get wee spells like that, but you're right. I mean, it's important that players take advantage of it. Ferguson's done really well for himself. Don't know if Lennon Miller's played much for Udinese, I've got to say. I think he's been injured. And you've got Josh Doig out there as well. I think he's had a couple of moves, but doing well. So, if a young player's coming up and he's got a choice between go to the Old Firm or go to Italy, you know, would you really tell him to go to the Old Firm? I'm not sure I would. I'd say,
yeah,
yeah, Italy, go and experience it. I mean, what a lifestyle.
yeah. I'll certainly get better weather anyway.
Yeah.
So
Better weather, better
yeah,
food, better culture. I mean, what's not to like?
yeah. I couldn't knock them for it, to be fair. Now we spoke about a whole bunch of injuries and problems that we've got. So with all that being said, how do you think the manager's going to line up on this one? Do you think he'll go back to a back three, or do you think that formula that he found against Dundee, that's probably, I think, the best we've played this season, to be honest? Do you think he sticks with that kind of shape?
I mean, I wonder if because it's Livingston at home, I wonder if he just goes a back three and just pushes the fullbacks right up. And gets if Tav's in the back three, then he can play pretty on the front foot as well. He's not going to sit back, and you just have say Giga and Fernandez as the two staying back. Get Aarons in the team right, get Magoma in the team left, and just kind of really push forward and just try and keep the pressure up. I would always have suggested we try two up front, but with Chavite, I doubt maybe that's less likely. Although again, Danilo and Neovski, why not? It's at Livingston at home. We want to dominate the ball and create chances, so I put them in as well and just see what they can do with Danilo in the slightly withdrawn role. And sort of Raskin, Asgard, Diamandi midfield, presumably, and just really kind of push them up and tell Asgard and Diamandi just to get up in and around the box. We may as well just go for it. It's a must-win game. We've got defensive injuries, so let's just put more attackers in the team.
Yeah, why not? Before we finish up, have you got a score prediction?
3-0. 3-0 to the good guys. I think
I'll take a
Danny Wilson, he came in, he's done domestically, he's done all that's been asked of him. Europe's a step too far with this squad, and nobody's blaming him for Europe. But domestically, he's been good. I don't hold the semi-final against them, given the way that went. And we actually did well to fight back. The legs went in extra time, and obviously the whole refereeing nonsense yet again. So I don't hold that semi-final against them at all. Other than that, his domestic record's been really good, and I think he'll continue it tomorrow. But we want to try and, we're greedy, so we want to try and play with a bit of style. We want to try and see us dominate Livingston, create lots of chances and good goals, and we need to score from a set piece because Rangers fans are an impatient bunch, and if we do not score from a set piece tomorrow, poor Scott Fry is going to be getting it in the neck from the Twitter hordes. So yeah, 3-0 tomorrow with a goal from a corner thrown in.
yeah. Scott Fry's got to earn his money. Definitely. Right. I think we'll call it time there. All that's left for me to do is thank my guest, Alan. Thanks as always.
Yep, cheers, Brian. See you again soon, mate.
Thank you. As well as being live tonight, the show will be available on all podcasting platforms: iTunes, Spotify, Acast, Stitcher. We're back on Sunday. I think it's Rob, Colin, and Jamie that are on to review all the talking points from Saturday's match. Until next time.